Hey guys, I'm coming to you today from the floor of my parents' house because I am back in the United States visiting my family. I'm having a bit of a whirlwind tour of the United States while I'm here. I'm going to 6 different states. One of them is California. I'm currently in Virginia. That should give you an idea of what my week has been like so far. And so I'm sitting down here with the mystery novels. Hello, Ellis Peters. Hello, Mary Stewart. I didn't bring my own shampoo because I'm staying here long enough that I thought I could just buy American shampoo and use it here, and it's working very differently with my hair, so I'm trying to avoid having a total fro by channeling my inner Disney princess with this containment situation. So let's talk about the books that I read in July. Well, the reason I went to California is to attend Costume College, which is a conference for historical and fantasy costumers, and also some cosplayers. There are cosplayers there. We love them too. Which means that for most of July, I was frantically sewing, which does not lend itself well to reading, but it does lend itself well to audiobooking. So I got through a lot of audiobooks. Before we get to that, that also means that I made the executive decision to not participate in Jane Austen July, even though it sounded fun because I was like, too much going on right now. But I did kind of coincidentally participate. So the first thing that I finished was Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This is I've been working on this with the online stage. It is now available through audible.com if you would like to purchase the Libby production of Northanger Abbey. This is a full cast recording, so you won't hear very much of me. I played a bunch of parts. I believe I played one of Catherine's sisters and 2 of Isabella's sisters, and I did the editing. I also read Othello for the Bard Book Club, and I made a whole big long video about that. If you want every thought I've ever had about Othello, you can go check out that video. And then the 3 other books that I read were audiobooks. The first one was Washington Square by Henry James. This was published in 1880, so I believe at this point Henry James was living in England, although he is a native-born American. This is about a young woman whose name I have forgotten at this point. I think it's Catherine. Did I read 2 books with main characters named Catherine? I think I did. Catherine is a young lady who lives with her father and aunt in New York City. Her father is a doctor, and he's not very impressed with Catherine. He definitely doesn't think she's beautiful. He also doesn't think she's particularly talented or witty, and she's not particularly. And the plot mainly revolves around this young man named Morris who wants to marry Catherine, and Catherine keeps insisting that it's because they are in love, and her father keeps insisting that it's because he wants the money. Henry James himself wasn't particularly pleased with this novel, and I can see why. It doesn't really know what it's doing or what it wants to focus on. It's also not totally sure who its main character is, whether it's Catherine or Catherine's father, or perhaps the main character is really Morris, and we just happen to be approaching him from an oblique angle. The part that I think makes it at least somewhat worth reading is Catherine's aunt romanticizes this whole situation much more than is necessary. So you don't really get scenes of like the young lovers fantasizing about romantic clifftop meetings or anything, but you do get the aunt fantasizing about like how she could facilitate secret encounters, and she kind of like she wants them to get together perhaps more than any other characters in the book, so that she can sort of, I don't know, fulfill the role of Juliet's nurse in some grand drama. So that's kind of entertaining. I did end up only giving this book 3 stars, but this book did kind of get a rewrite by somebody else. I actually already kind of knew the plot of this story because I know the plot of the Broadway play, The Heiress, which was also turned into a film starring Olivia de Havilland. And The Heiress is basically taking the premise and the characters of Washington Square and sort of taking it in a more defined direction and giving it a great ending. The ending of Washington Square is very sort of restful. We sort of ease back into a state of normalcy, but the ending of The Heiress is dramatic and satisfying. So maybe read Washington Square, but definitely read or see The Heiress. The next audiobook that I listened to was another 18th century English novel. I've been trying to get through these, and I finally found one that was not a total drag. It was A Simple Story by Elizabeth Inchbald. Now, before we can get in to the book, I need to just talk about Elizabeth Inchbald for a second, because her life was crazy. One episode in the dramatic story of her life, why didn't she just write a biography, an autobiography? So at 18 years old, young Elizabeth ran away from home and went to London to become an actor, despite the fact that she had a speech impediment and was very uncomfortable speaking in front of large crowds. Why did you decide that career path, Elizabeth? I don't know. And I think that approach is the same approach that she takes to her fiction writing. Why did you bring up that plot point, Elizabeth? I don't know. I just did. So you may know of Elizabeth Inchbald because she is mentioned in Mansfield Park as the author of the scandalous German play Lover's Vows that the residents of Mansfield and environs are putting on. And A Simple Story made me realize what I was doing wrong in my approach to the 18th century novel. And that is that I have been trying to read good 18th century novels, which is not the right tack, because good 18th century novels are like they're trying, I can tell, that, you know, Maria Edgeworth and Fanny Burney and Samuel Richardson are trying to create some sort of realistic intrigue and characters, but they're just failing because they don't know how yet. Jane Austen has not shown us the way. And so they just end up falling kind of flat. What you need to do is read bad 18th century novels, ones that like are just embracing the tropes and the silliness really hardcore. So A Simple Story is about a young woman. I don't remember her name. What's her name? Oh, I don't remember her name because she doesn't have a first name. She's just Miss Milner the whole time. So Miss Milner is orphaned in her late teenage years, and her father assigns one of his friends who is pretty close to her age. I say that because there's going to be a romance, and I don't want to creep you out. He is assigned as her guardian. She falls incredibly in love with him. He's a Catholic priest. Oops. And this book is incredibly melodramatic. There's people like fighting duels that they are intentionally going to lose and like possibly die in, like so that their beloved can be happy. And there's people a lot of times, this happens probably once a chapter, like throwing themselves on their knees and sobbing before someone else. Oh my god, this book is nuts and I love it. It's not that it's nuts, it's that it's camp. And as I have previously discussed on this channel, I do quite enjoy some camp. So I gave this 4 to 5 stars because I am aware that it's not like actually a well-constructed narrative, but I loved it a lot. I think it's a great place to get started in 18th century literature. And it also fulfills the challenge of read a book by one of Jane Austen's contemporaries. That's 2 challenges for Jane Austen July. The last book I read was by Thomas Hardy, so it didn't fulfill a Jane Austen July challenge, but I did at Costume College wear my early Regency striped dress. Maybe there is a picture of it by the time I'm uploading this video, otherwise I look dumb right now. So I know that wasn't one of the challenges, but I feel like it counts for something. I did Jane Austen July. Okay, and then the last audiobook that I got through was A Laodicean by Thomas Hardy. I said it wrong. Laodicean. So named after the Church of Laodicea in like Turkey in the early Christian era. and there's some element of early Christian history that this is a reference to that nobody gets, because Thomas Hardy, why do you have to come up with such weird names for characters and titles for books? I don't know. So this is a book that Thomas Hardy wrote when he was sick, and it was largely dictated rather than written by himself, and yeah, you can tell. He categorized this as one of his novels of ingenuity, which basically means Victorian thriller. It's much more plot-focused than his more famous works. And I think it actually kind of wanted to be a romance. I think there was the potential for Paula Power, the central character, although I hesitate to say the main character, to be a really interesting, well-developed person. But Thomas Hardy sort of keeps getting distracted by other things. So what we've got going on here is a sort of old money versus new money situation, and old money that isn't there anymore. So Paula Power is the descendant of a railway magnate, and her father had purchased an old castle from the Distancies, and Paula is actually good friends with the young Charlotte Distancy. Paula's father is now dead, and Paula is living in the castle, and Charlotte actually spends a fair bit of time in the castle with her because it used to be her house, and she and her father and brother have moved out somewhere smaller. And then of course this is Thomas Hardy, so we have to work out this conflict in a love triangle. The love triangle consists of Paula and Charlotte Distancy's brother and a young architect named George Somerset, who like has a job and better prospects than Captain Distancy, but is not of some sort of elevated and romantic background. And Paula is actually kind of in love with George Somerset, but she's also in love with at least the romance of the Distancies. And this setup could be an interesting story, but George Distancy, Paula wishes. George Somerset is actually kind of more the main character, and we're kind of getting everything from his perspective, at least for like the first 2/3. I don't know, it's a bit wishy-washy. And so like it's not really focused on Paula. Instead it's sort of focused on the plot, but like bits of the plot kind of get developed, and then they do pay off, but they don't pay off in like the optimum way. So I think Thomas Hardy should have taken a little more time to convalesce and not force himself to write this book, although maybe he needed the money. So yeah, Laodicean, or however you say it, I gave it 3 stars. So that's all the reading that I did in July. I'll be back soon with another video that I'm very excited about.